Dear friends, dear students, welcome to our Comparative Politics PhD class. Today I'll be speaking about central banks and the quality of democracy. We have two different topics for today. The one is central banks and the other is the quality of democracy. I'm not going to connect the central banks to the quality of democracy. They are two separate topics. So let's begin with central banks. Dear friends, a country with a central bank is actually given the chance to regulate its own money politics, its own cash politics. And for instance, the European Central Bank is regulating the money politics, the monetary politics of Eurozone countries, not only one country. And the central bank might be under control of the government, or it might be autonomous. It might be independent or controlled by the government. So there are two types of central banking models in the world. When central banks are strong and independent, they play a critical role in the policy process. Economists have paid a great deal of attention to central banks and have developed precise measures of central bank autonomy. The most important task of central banks is the making of monetary policy, that is, the regulation of interest rates and the supply of money. Interest rates and money supply. Monetary policy has a direct effect on price stability and the control of inflation, and it indirectly, but also very strongly, affects the levels of unemployment, economic growth, and fluctuations in the business cycle. Other duties that central banks frequently perform are managing the government's financial transactions, financing the government's budget deficit by buying government securities, making loans from their reserves, or printing money, financing development projects, regulating and supervising commercial banks, and, if necessary, bailing out, that means saving, insolvent banks and publicly owned enterprises, in addition to controlling inflation. So these are the main tasks performed by central banks in various countries. To give a few examples, the highest, most independent ratings are given to a governor of a central bank whose term of office is 8 years or longer, who cannot be dismissed, and who may not simultaneously hold other offices in government. I repeat, the level of independence of a central bank is actually determined according to the central bank's chief executive, the governor. For instance, if the governor stays in the office for 8 years or more and he or she cannot be dismissed after appointed by the government, and he or she cannot hold another office in the government, this is a property of an independent, autonomous central bank. The lowest, on the other hand, the least independent ratings are given to governors who are appointed for fewer than 4 years and who can be dismissed at the discretion of the executive, the government, and who can also hold another office. So, if the government has the chance to dismiss the head of the central bank, well, I'm not happy with that person, I'm dismissing him, and the head of the central bank is actually given a chance to hold another government office, and he or she is actually appointed for 4 years or less, then this is a dependent, not independent, dependent central bank. Why? Because the government has a broader range of influence on the central bank. As long as they are not happy with the chief executive of the central bank, they might just dismiss him or her. Dear friends, today one of the most crucial central banks is the European Central Bank, the central bank that regulates the monetary politics of entire Eurozone countries. The European Central Bank was established in as a common central bank of Eurozone countries, and it actually adopted euro, the European currency, as the common currency of Eurozone countries. In 1999, Eurozone members transformed the central bank of their countries involved from a domestic institution to an element of the international system. So, in Eurozone countries, there is a central body. It is the European Central Bank that actually manipulates the monetary politics of the Eurozone countries, and the old national central banks of the Eurozone countries are not anymore the influential system. They are not actually the influential body because they devoted the authorities, the Eurozone countries devoted their authorities to European Central Bank. And I have to mention that European Central Bank is an independent central bank. Dear friends, another topic that I'm going to talk about today is the quality of democracy. There are so many democracies in the world, so many countries that are being ruled by democracy in the world. In some democracies, there is a consolidated democratic body. In some others, there is not that much consolidated democracy. So there are some differences, there are some fluctuations amongst democratic nations, and there are some questions. We don't need to answer all of them immediately, but it's good to think about them. For instance, is the majoritarian democracy really good for governance? And is the consensus democracy really good about minority representation? These are questions we might ask to ourselves. As I have told you, we don't need to answer them immediately, and our answers to such questions might change over time, but it is something good and beneficial to keep such questions in mind. For instance, Mr. George Bush, one of the ex-presidents of United States, he once upon a time said, "I want a kinder and gentler nation." Kinder and gentler. That's about actually democracy, a more qualified democracy, kinder and gentler. How we can have a better democracy is another question. With welfare states, better protection of environment, less people in prison, no death penalty, and none of them essentially actually gives the answer. But as political scientists, it is our duty to think about how to have a better democracy. Of course, it might not be any of ours chance to give the people a solution. You see, this is the best democracy. But our duty is asking such questions to ourselves throughout our academic or professional career. And other questions about the quality of democracy. Of course, are elections for the national legislature and head of the government free and fair? A question. Are municipal elections both free and fair? Question. Do laws provide for broadly equal campaigning opportunities? A big question. And do opposition parties have a realistic prospect of achieving government? Another question. Questions for the second category, the functioning government, include: do freely elected representatives determine government policy? Very interesting question, actually. Do special economic, religious, or other powerful domestic groups exercise significant political power parallel to democratic institutions? An important question. Are sufficient mechanisms and institutions in place for assuring government accountability to the electorate in between elections? Important question. And is the functioning of government open and transparent with sufficient public access to information? These are some questions raised by Professor Arend Leipart, and all of them are valuable questions, and we better keep asking ourselves such questions in performing our profession, in acting as political scientists. Of course, one of the most important goals of democracy is achieving political equality. But what is that equality? Who is equal? A big question there. The degree of political equality is therefore important for indicating the quality of democracy. And political equality is difficult to measure directly, but economic equality can serve as a valid proxy, since political equality is more likely to prevail in the absence of great economic inequalities. Many resources that flow directly or indirectly from one's position in the economic order can be converted into political resources. That's a quotation. And of course, how about the number of women MPs? Why they are so few in many nations? Why the number of women MPs in the parliaments in many nations are very few? Why? And how about the representation of minorities? Are the minorities represented well all around the world? These are questions, as I've told you previously, raised by Professor Leipart. And another thing is turnout. The turnout is the total amount of voters who went to vote, who attended a specific election. For instance, Malta around 95%, Uruguay around 95%, Luxembourg around 89%. And these are countries with high turnouts, and there are some countries with, lesser amounts of turnout. Switzerland, less than 40%, for instance, as you might see in the slide. Botswana, around 47%, Jamaica, around 40%, and United States, around 51%. And in some countries, voting is mandatory, it is compulsory. In Uruguay and Luxembourg, for instance, voting is mandatory. And the research has actually proved that in consensus democracies, in pluralist democracies, the turnout average is 7% greater than that of majoritarian democracies. Not a very huge difference, actually, 7%. And another set of surveys actually asked people in various countries whether they were satisfied with the democracy. In Denmark and in Norway, around 83 and 82% respectively of the people said they were very or fairly satisfied with the democracy in their countries. On the other hand, in Italy and Greece, respectively, 19 and 28% of the people expressed satisfaction. So You see, Italy and Greece are actually European Union countries, but the people, the citizens in those countries are not pleased with the quality of democracy in their countries. Of course, the quality of democracy is something subjective. I might understand something different from you when we are talking about democracy. It is subjective, and actually it is important to keep on asking ourselves questions about the quality of democracy. Dear friends, if you would like to, by the way, contact me. I think you are familiar with my email address as well, but I'm providing my email address once more here. As you might see in the slide as well, it is sevki.kiralp@neu.edu.tr. My email address, sevki.kiralp@neu.edu.tr. You might contact me via my email address. And thank you for listening. I'll be looking forward to meet you in our forthcoming classes. Have a nice day.